There are some mistakes in life that you can never take back. Some moments where your pride becomes so loud that it drowns out your destiny. This is the story of a woman who thought her beauty made her untouchable, until one slap changed everything. Her name was Amaka, and the day she raised her hand against a humble man in public was the day her entire world began to crumble. But what she didn't know, what nobody knew, was that the man standing before her with flowers in his hands wasn't just any man. He was royalty in disguise, searching for something money couldn't buy, a humble heart. And by the time she discovered the truth, it was already too late. Let me take you back to where it all began. Amaka was the kind of woman who stopped traffic. Not just because of her beauty, though God had been generous with that. It was the way she carried herself, like she owned every room she entered, like the ground beneath her feet should feel honored to hold her weight. Her skin glowed like polished bronze, her eyes sharp and calculating, her smile reserved only for those she deemed worthy, which wasn't many. In her neighborhood in Lekki, Lagos, everyone knew her. The men greeted her with respect tinged with fear. The women whispered about her with a mixture of admiration and resentment. She worked as a marketing executive at one of those big tech companies in Victoria Island, the kind where everyone wore designer clothes and spoke with accents that changed depending on who was listening. Amaka fit right in. She drove a sleek Honda, carried bags that cost more than some people's rent, and her Instagram was a carefully curated gallery of luxury and perfection. 12,000 followers. Verified badge. Brand partnerships. She had become her own brand, and that brand was untouchable. But underneath all that polish was a heart hardened by pride. Amaka believed, truly believed, that no man was good enough for her. Not the engineers who tried to shoot their shot at the office. Not the businessmen who sent her messages on Instagram. Not the bankers, not the doctors, not even the oil and gas executives who could afford her lifestyle. They were all beneath her, in one way or another. Too short. Too dark. Not rich enough. Not connected enough. Not from the right family. The list of disqualifications was endless, and Amaka wielded it like a sword, cutting down every man who dared approach her. Her mother, Mama Amaka, a simple woman who sold provisions in Surulere, would call her every Sunday with the same warning. "My daughter, beauty is not forever. Pride goes before a fall. Don't use your own hands to chase away your blessing." And every Sunday, Amaka would laugh, that dismissive laugh that said she knew better. "Mummy, please. A queen doesn't settle for peasants. When my king comes, he will know how to approach me properly." That day, the day everything changed, started like any other Saturday. Amaka was at the Palm shopping mall in Lekki, moving through the crowd like a celebrity, her heels clicking against the marble floor, her phone in one hand, a shopping bag from Zara in the other. She was so absorbed in her world that she didn't notice when her handbag slipped from her shoulder and fell, spilling her wallet, lipstick, and car keys across the floor. A man bent down immediately to help. He was wearing simple clothes, nothing fancy, just a clean white shirt and black trousers, the kind of outfit that didn't scream money or status. His face was kind, his movements gentle as he gathered her belongings. "Sister, your things," he said softly, extending her bag toward her with both hands, a sign of respect. Amaka snatched it from him without even looking at his face. No thank you. No acknowledgement. Just a quick glance that said, "You've done your job, now disappear," before she walked away, her heels clicking louder, faster, as if his very presence had contaminated her space. The man stood there for a moment, watching her leave, a small sad smile on his face. His name was Kingsley, and that brief encounter, that moment of being treated like he was invisible, would set everything in motion. What Amaka didn't know, what she couldn't have known as she walked away that day, was that she had just rejected the man who would change her life forever. Not because he would hurt her or seek revenge, but because his very existence would become the mirror that reflected everything wrong with who she had become. Before we go further, tell me, do you believe pride can destroy a destiny? Drop your answer in the comments, and don't forget to like this video if you're already feeling this story. The weeks that followed were typical for Amaka. Men came, men went, men tried, men failed. Her Instagram DMs were a graveyard of blocked accounts and ignored messages. At the office, her colleagues had stopped trying to set her up on dates because every introduction ended the same way, with Amaka finding some fatal flaw that made the man unworthy. Too eager. Not eager enough. Tries too hard. Doesn't try hard enough. The contradictions didn't matter to her because the truth was simpler than any of her excuses. Amaka didn't want to be anyone's equal. She wanted to be worshipped. Her best friend, Chioma, tried to reason with her one evening over cocktails at a rooftop bar in Ikoyi. Amaka, you're 31. You're beautiful, successful, everything a man could want. But you're also impossible. When will you realize that a good man doesn't have to be perfect? Amaka swirled her drink, the ice clinking against the glass. Chioma, you settled. I won't. There's a difference between us. You married a man who drives a Camry. I'm waiting for the man with the Range Rover and the range to match. The words came out smooth, practiced, but they carried a sting that made Chioma go quiet for the rest of the evening. Meanwhile, Kingsley went about his life with a quiet purpose that Amaka would never have understood. He lived in a modest apartment in Aja, far from the glitz of the island. He volunteered at community centers, mentored young boys who had dropped out of school, and spent his evenings reading or walking along the beach, watching the sunset paint the Lagos sky in shades of orange and purple. To anyone who saw him, he was just another young man trying to make it in Lagos. Humble, respectful, forgettable. But Kingsley wasn't forgettable to everyone. The people in his neighborhood loved him. The Mai guard at his compound greeted him with genuine warmth. The woman who sold akara at the junction always gave him extra because he had a good heart. Children ran to him when they saw him coming, knowing he always had sweets in his pocket or a kind word that made them feel seen. Kingsley moved through the world like someone who understood that true wealth wasn't counted in naira and kobo, but in the lives you touched and the love you gave freely. Then came the wedding. It was one of those big Lagos society weddings, the kind where half the guests are there for the jollof rice and Instagram content. Amaka was invited because the bride had been her classmate in university, back when Amaka was still somewhat tolerable. She arrived late, as always, making an entrance in a gold dress that caught every light, every eye, every camera. She was holding court near the drinks table, laughing with a group of admirers, when she stepped backward without looking and lost her balance. Two strong hands caught her before she hit the ground. For a moment, she felt safe, steady, held by someone who had moved with the kind of reflex that spoke of genuine care. Then she turned and saw who had caught her. Kingsley. The same man from the mall. The same simple clothes, though this time he wore a light blue kaftan that was clean but clearly not designer. The same kind face, now concerned, asking, "Are you all right?" Amaka jerked away from him like he had burned her. "Don't touch me." Her voice was loud enough that conversations around them stopped. People turned to look. "Who do you think you are, putting your hands on me like that?" The venom in her tone was disproportionate to the offense, which was saving her from falling, but Amaka didn't care. In her mind, this nobody had dared to touch her, and that couldn't go unpunished. Kingsley raised both hands in a peaceful gesture, stepping back. "I'm sorry, sister. I was just trying to help. I didn't mean any disrespect." His voice was calm, sincere, the voice of someone who genuinely meant no harm. But Amaka wasn't done. "Next time, help someone on your level. I don't need charity from someone dressed like he came straight from Oshodi Market." The words landed like slaps, and the small crowd that had gathered gasped. A few people laughed nervously. Others looked away, embarrassed on Kingsley's behalf. Kingsley didn't respond. He just nodded slightly, that same sad smile from the mall crossing his face, and walked away. But as he disappeared into the crowd, an older woman standing nearby, one of those Lagos aunties who had seen everything and feared nothing, looked at Amaka and said loudly enough for others to hear, "This girl's pride will be her downfall. Mark my words. Pride always falls." Amaka rolled her eyes and turned back to her admirers, but the party didn't feel quite as fun anymore. And that night, as she lay in her king-size bed in her expensive apartment, she couldn't shake the image of Kingsley's face. Not because she felt guilt. She didn't. But because something about his calmness, his refusal to fight back, irritated her in a way she couldn't name. It was like he knew something she didn't, and that possibility, however small, threatened the carefully constructed world where Amaka was always right and everyone else was always beneath her. What she didn't know was that Kingsley had gone home that night and made a decision. A decision that would change both their lives forever. 3 weeks later, Kingsley stood in the parking lot of the Palm shopping mall, the same place where Amaka had ignored him months before, holding a small bouquet of red roses and rehearsing words in his head. His heart was pounding. Not from fear of rejection, he had made peace with that possibility, but from the vulnerability of putting his feelings on display, of choosing honesty over pride. He had thought about this moment constantly since the wedding. Not the humiliation she had caused him, but the glimpse he had seen beneath it. In that split second when he caught her, before she knew who was holding her, he had felt her weight, her humanity, and seen something in her eyes that looked almost like fear. Fear of falling, yes, but also fear of needing someone. And in that moment, Kingsley had felt something he couldn't explain: compassion. Maybe even love, though he wasn't sure love was the right word for what he felt. It was more like recognition. Like looking at someone drowning and knowing you had the strength to pull them out, if only they would stop fighting you. His friends had called him crazy. "Brothers, that babe will embarrass you," they warned. "She doesn't respect anybody. Why are you doing this?" And Kingsley had simply smiled and said, "Because someone needs to show her what real love looks like, even if she rejects it." So there he stood, on a busy Saturday afternoon, as shoppers moved past him with bags and children and the chaos of Lagos weekend life swirling around him. He saw her coming from across the parking lot. She was with two friends, laughing at something on her phone, her natural hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, her confidence radiating like heat. Kingsley took a deep breath and walked toward her. "Amaka," he called out, his voice steady but gentle. She stopped, recognized him, and her expression immediately shifted from curiosity to irritation. "You again? Are you following me?" "No," Kingsley said, and he stepped closer, close enough that her friends moved back slightly, sensing something significant was about to happen. "I just want to talk to you. To tell you something I should have said before." A small crowd was beginning to form. In Lagos, any public confrontation draws an audience faster than free food. Phones came out. Someone was definitely recording. Amaka felt the attention and fed off it, standing taller, her voice louder. "Talk about what? What could you possibly have to say to me?" Kingsley extended the roses toward her. They weren't expensive, just simple red roses from a street vendor, but he held them like they carried all the sincerity in his heart. "Amaka, I know you don't know me well. I know I'm not the kind of man you think you want. But I see you. Not just your beauty, everybody sees that. I see the way you protect yourself with pride because you're afraid of being hurt. I see the way you push people away before they can get close. And I just want you to know that you don't have to be afraid. Not with me." The crowd was silent now. Even Amaka's friends looked touched. For just a second, just a flicker, something softened in Amaka's eyes. Then she remembered where she was, remembered that people were watching, remembered that her brand, her image, her entire identity was built on being above this, above him, above any man who couldn't afford to propose with a diamond ring and a Benz. "Are you proposing to me?" she asked, her voice dripping with disbelief. Kingsley smiled. "Yes. I know it's not the fancy proposal you probably dreamed of. But I'm here, I'm real, and I'm asking if you would give me a chance to show you what real love looks like." He didn't kneel. Not because he was disrespectful or didn't understand tradition, but because he wanted to look her in the eyes, equal to equal, human to human. He wanted her to see him as a man, not as someone beneath her or above her, just as someone who cared. That's when Amaka's face changed completely. The softness vanished, replaced by something cold and furious. "You." She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. It was sharp, cutting. "You have the audacity to propose to me? Like this? In a parking lot? With these cheap flowers?" She slapped the roses out of his hand, and they scattered across the concrete. "You didn't even kneel down. Do you know who I am?" Kingsley stayed calm. "I know exactly who you are, Amaka. That's why I'm here." "Then you should know better." Her voice was rising now, shrill with indignation and performance, because she knew the cameras were on her and she needed to make a statement, needed everyone to know that she was not the kind of woman who accepted proposals from poor men in parking lots. "Let me teach you a lesson about your place." And before anyone could react, before Kingsley could even blink, her hand flew through the air and connected with his face. The slap echoed across the parking lot like a gunshot. His head turned sharply to the side, his eyes closed from the impact, and for a moment, the entire crowd went silent in shock. Then the chaos erupted. "Ah!" She slapped him. someone shouted. Kai. This babe no get respect oh, another voice added. Phones were everywhere now, at least 20 of them, all recording, all capturing the moment from different angles. Kingsley stood there, his cheek red from the impact, his eyes still closed, his face expressionless. Amaka was breathing hard, her chest heaving, her hand still raised slightly as if she might strike again. Let this be a lesson, she announced to everyone watching, her voice loud and clear, to any poor man who thinks he can try nonsense with me. Know your level. Then she turned on her heel, grabbed her friends, who looked shocked and uncomfortable, and marched toward her car, her head held high. Kingsley slowly opened his eyes. He looked down at the scattered roses on the ground, then up at the crowd still staring at him. A few people looked sympathetic. Others looked entertained, like they had just witnessed premium content. One elderly man walked over and patted Kingsley's shoulder. Sorry, my son. That one is not your wife. God has better for you. Kingsley picked up the roses, one by one, even though they were crushed and dirty now. Then he walked away, quietly, with dignity, while the phones continued recording, while the whispers and jokes started spreading, while the video that would change everything was already being uploaded, titled, and shared across Lagos, across Nigeria, across the world. What Amaka didn't know, as she drove away feeling victorious and justified, was that this was the last moment she would ever feel powerful. Because the fall was coming. And it was going to be devastating. By Sunday morning, Amaka was trending. Not the good kind of trending, not the influencer kind where brands slide into your DMs with partnership offers. This was the nuclear kind, the kind that destroys lives in real time. The video had been posted on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook simultaneously by different witnesses. Proud Lagos babe slaps poor guy for proposing without kneeling was the caption on the version that went mega viral, accumulating 2 million views in the first 12 hours. The comment sections were brutal, merciless, the kind of mob justice that the internet does better than any court. This is what's wrong with our women today. Too much pride. Imagine slapping someone who showed you love. She will cry blood. I pray she never finds a husband. Let pride marry her. That guy dodged a bullet. Thank God he saw who she really was. The memes started immediately. Amaka's face, frozen in that moment of rage, her hand raised, became a template for jokes about rejection, pride, and karma. Someone edited it with gospel music playing in the background, titling it, When You're Too Anointed for Nonsense. Another version had a pastor's voiceover saying, Your pride has cancelled your destiny, perfectly synced with the slap. But the real damage wasn't the jokes. It was the doxing. Within 24 hours, internet detectives had found her full name, her workplace, her Instagram handle, even her mother's shop in Surulere. Her Instagram went from 12,000 followers to 15,000, but not because people liked her. They followed to watch the crash in real time, to leave hateful comments under her perfectly curated photos. This is the woman who slapped that innocent man. Beauty without character is worthless. I hope you're proud of yourself. You will beg for love and never find it. Amaka made her first mistake by responding. On Sunday evening, still feeling self-righteous, she posted on her Instagram story, I don't owe anyone an explanation. If a man can't respect tradition and kneel properly, he doesn't deserve my yes. I said what I said. The post was screenshot and shared 10,000 times, each time with more vicious commentary. She had meant to defend herself, to control the narrative. Instead, she had poured gasoline on a fire that was already out of control. Monday morning, she walked into her office with her head high, determined not to show weakness. But the atmosphere had changed. Her colleagues, who used to laugh at her jokes and compliment her outfits, now avoided eye contact. The CEO's secretary called her at 10 a.m. Mr. Johnson wants to see you immediately. Mr. Johnson was the kind of man who smiled when he fired you, the kind who believed that company image was everything. He smiled at Amaka as she entered his pristine corner office. Sit down, please. She sat, her confidence already beginning to crack. I'm sure you've seen the video, he said, his fingers steepled under his chin. The one where you physically assault someone in public. It wasn't assault, it was. It doesn't matter what you call it, Amaka. What matters is that our clients have seen it. Our partners have seen it. and several of them have called this morning to express concern about having you represent our brand." He slid a paper across the desk. "This is a temporary suspension. 2 weeks, unpaid, while we conduct an internal review. I suggest you use this time to reflect on your behavior and its consequences." Amaka took the paper with shaking hands. "But sir, I've been one of your top performers." "One mistake, and one very public mistake," he interrupted. "You're dismissed." She walked out of that office in a daze. The elevator ride down felt like descending into hell. By the time she reached her car, she was crying, mascara running down her cheeks, the same face that had looked so powerful on Saturday now broken and vulnerable on Monday. But the universe wasn't done with her. That evening, she started calling the men who had been pursuing her. The businessman who had taken her to dinner at Sky Restaurant. The engineer who had been sending her good morning texts for 3 months. The banker who had promised her a trip to Dubai. One by one, she called them, suddenly willing to give them a chance, suddenly ready to be less picky. One by one, they rejected her. Some ignored her calls completely. Others answered and made excuses. "I'm actually seeing someone now. I don't think we're compatible. I saw what happened, and honestly, I don't think you're the kind of person I want in my life." The engineer was the most honest. "Amaka, you've always treated me like I was beneath you. Why would I want to be with someone who only wants me now that she's desperate?" Each rejection was a knife twisting deeper. Each blocked number was a door slamming shut. By Wednesday, Amaka had stopped calling anyone. There was no one left to call. Her Instagram became a war zone. She stopped posting, but that didn't stop people from tagging her, from commenting on old photos, from finding pictures of her with other men and making up stories about how she had mistreated them too. Brands that had sent her products for promotion now sent emails asking her to delete their content from her page. The verification badge that had seemed so important suddenly felt like a target on her back. Thursday night, her mother called. Mama Amaka had been calling all week, but Amaka had been avoiding her, ashamed, not ready to hear, "I told you so." But this time, she answered. "Mama. Amaka, my daughter." Her mother's voice was thick with tears. "I have been crying since Sunday. People are showing me videos, sending me links. They are laughing at you, laughing at me. Why, Amaka? Why did you do it?" "Mama, I don't know. I was angry. He didn't kneel, he didn't." "He didn't what?" "He didn't love you. He didn't respect you enough to approach you in public, to put himself at risk of this exact humiliation? That boy showed you more love in that moment than any of those rich men you've been chasing, and you struck him like he was nothing." Her mother was sobbing now. "I warned you, Amaka. I told you that pride comes before a fall. But you didn't listen. You never listen. I'm sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this, my daughter. The whole of Lagos has seen who you are. The whole of Nigeria is laughing. I can't even go to market without people whispering. You have disgraced yourself. You have disgraced me. And for what? For pride. For thinking you're better than everyone else." The call ended with both of them crying. Amaka sat in her dark apartment, surrounded by the expensive things that had once defined her worth, and felt more alone than she had ever felt in her life. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the constant buzz of her phone as more notifications came in, more strangers weighing in on her biggest mistake, more proof that her carefully constructed world had completely collapsed. And Kingsley? Nobody had seen him since Saturday. No interviews, no response videos, no attempt to capitalize on his viral moment. He had simply vanished, like a ghost, like a lesson delivered and then withdrawn. Amaka found herself wondering about him more than she wanted to admit. Where was he? How was he? Did he hate her? Did he feel victorious seeing her suffer? But what haunted her most wasn't any of those questions. It was the memory of his face, right before she slapped him. The calmness. The sadness. The look that said he had expected this, had known exactly how it would end, and had chosen to love her anyway. That look kept her awake at night, replaying in her mind like a judgment she couldn't escape. If this were you, what would you do? Would you forgive someone who humiliated you in public? Type yes or no in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button if you're still watching. While Amaka's world was burning, Kingsley was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere that would redefine everything Amaka thought she knew about the man she had humiliated. The black Range Rover with tinted windows and no license plate pulled up to massive iron gates. Security personnel in crisp uniforms stood at attention as the gate swung open automatically, revealing a compound that looked like something from a movie. Manicured lawns stretched in every direction. Fountains. Sculptures. A mansion that was less a house and more a palace, with columns and balconies and windows that gleamed in the afternoon sun. Kingsley stepped out of the car, but he wasn't alone. Two men in traditional attire flanked him, not as bodyguards but as attendants, the kind reserved for royalty. They walked him to the main entrance where more staff bowed as he passed. "Welcome home, Your Highness," they murmured, their voices respectful and warm. Inside, the palace was everything you would expect. Marble floors. Chandeliers. Portraits of generations of rulers lining the walls, each face regal and commanding. Kingsley walked through it all with the ease of someone who had grown up here, someone for whom this opulence was normal, expected, almost boring. He found his father in the library, a massive room filled floor to ceiling with books. The king, Is Okafor III, was in his 70s but carried himself with the kind of authority that age only deepens. He wore traditional royal regalia, the wrapper and beads and staff of office that marked him as one of the most respected traditional rulers in the southeast. When he saw his son, his stern face softened into something approaching tenderness. "Kingsley, my son. Come, sit with me." Kingsley sat in the leather chair across from his father, the same chair he had sat in as a boy when receiving lectures about duty and honor and responsibility. But his father wasn't lecturing today. He was studying his son's face, noting the fading red mark on his cheek, the sadness in his eyes. "I saw the video," the king said finally. "The whole nation has seen it. Your mother is furious. She wants me to do something, to use our influence to destroy that girl's life completely." He paused. "But you told me not to." "Yes, Baba. I told you not to." "Why?" "She humiliated you. She struck you in public. Do you know what that means for our family? For our name?" Kingsley leaned back, choosing his words carefully. "Baba, you sent me to live as a common man for 3 years. You wanted me to understand our people, to see the world without the crown, without the privilege. And I did. I saw poverty. I saw struggle. But I also saw something else. I saw how pride destroys people. How people use arrogance to hide their pain. That girl, Amaka, she is suffering from something deeper than just pride. She is afraid. Afraid of being vulnerable. Afraid of not being enough. And when I approached her with love, with honesty, without pretending to be a prince, she couldn't handle it. Her pride was all she had to protect herself." The king listened, his expression unreadable. "So you forgive her?" "I have no hate for her, Baba. I just know now who truly deserves love. Someone who doesn't need a crown to show respect. Someone who sees value in people, not in their status." Kingsley smiled, but it was still sad, still tinged with the disappointment of hoping for better and finding worse. "You taught me that a king serves his people. But first, a king must find someone willing to serve alongside him. Amaka was never that person." The king nodded slowly. "You are wiser than I was at your age. I am proud of you, my son. Even in humiliation, you kept your dignity." He stood, signaling that the conversation was ending. "But now, you must move forward. The kingdom needs its prince. And more than that, you need to find a woman who deserves the crown you will place on her head." Over the next few weeks, Kingsley resumed his royal duties. He attended community meetings. He launched a scholarship program for underprivileged children. He visited rural villages with medical supplies and food. And everywhere he went, people loved him. Not because he was a prince, though that helped, but because he carried himself with a humility that was rare among the powerful. He listened to people's problems like they mattered. He spoke to the elderly with reverence. He played with children like he was one of them. This was who Kingsley truly was, and it had nothing to do with the crown and everything to do with the heart. It was during one of these community outreach programs in a small village that he met Aurora. She was a schoolteacher, 28, with a quiet beauty that didn't demand attention but earned it anyway. She wore simple clothes, her hair natural and unpretentious, her smile genuine as she helped distribute school supplies to children. When Kingsley approached to thank her for her work, she didn't bow or stammer or treat him like he was above her. She just smiled and said, "It's good to see leaders who actually care. Most just come for pictures and leave." Kingsley laughed. "I promise I'm not here for pictures." "Good. Because these children need more than photo ops. They need teachers who stay, resources that last, commitment that doesn't end when the cameras turn off." He found himself intrigued. Here was a woman who challenged him, who spoke her mind, who cared more about impact than image. They talked for an hour about education, about poverty, about the responsibility of those who have to help those who don't. And when the conversation ended, Kingsley realized he hadn't thought about Amaka once. Over the following months, he and Adaora grew closer. Not in the whirlwind, social media official way that defined modern relationships, but in the slow, steady way that builds foundations. They talked. They laughed. She challenged his assumptions. He supported her dreams of opening a school for orphans. And somewhere in that process, love grew naturally, without drama, without conditions, without the need for grand gestures or public proposals in parking lots. When Kingsley finally asked her to marry him, it was in that same village, surrounded by the children she taught, with his father present to give his blessing. He knelt, not because tradition demanded it, but because he wanted to. Because Adaora deserved that respect. And when she said yes, crying happy tears, it felt right in a way that nothing with Amaka ever could have. The engagement was announced quietly at first, just family and close friends. But eventually, as with all royal affairs, the news spread. The prince was getting married. Not to some society girl or celebrity, but to a humble teacher who had captured his heart with kindness instead of demanding it with beauty. And somewhere in Lagos, in a dark apartment with rent coming due and hope running out, Amaka saw the announcement on her phone and felt her entire world shatter all over again. The 2 weeks of suspension turned into a permanent termination. Company policy, they said. Creating negative publicity for the brand, they explained. Amaka didn't fight it. She didn't have the energy to fight anymore. She collected her things from her desk on a Wednesday afternoon when most people were in meetings, avoiding the stares and whispers, and walked out of the building that had once represented her success. The apartment in Lekki became harder to maintain. The rent was 45,000 naira per month, and without her salary, her savings were depleting fast. She tried freelancing, offering her marketing services online, but her reputation preceded her. Potential clients would recognize her name, Google her, find a video, and ghost her. One company was honest enough to send an email, "We appreciate your interest, but we're looking for someone whose personal brand aligns with our values." Personal brand. The phrase that had once been her pride was now her prison. By the 3rd month after the incident, Amaka had moved out of Lekki. She couldn't afford it anymore. She found a small room in Surulere, near her mother's shop, the kind of accommodation she had once mocked when her friends complained about rent. 1 room. Shared bathroom. Neighbors so close you could hear everything. This was her new reality, and the irony wasn't lost on her. She had climbed so high only to fall right back to where she started. Her mother didn't say, "I told you so," but she didn't need to. The silence between them said everything. Mama Amaka watched her daughter shrink, watched the pride evaporate, watched the girl who once walked like a queen now shuffle through life like a ghost. She would bring her food some evenings, sit with her in that tiny room, and pray. Always praying. For mercy. For redemption. For her daughter to find her way back to humility. Amaka tried everything to fix her situation. She deleted the Instagram post defending her actions and replaced it with an apology. "I deeply regret my actions that day. I allowed pride to control me, and I hurt someone who showed me nothing but kindness. I'm sorry." But the internet doesn't forgive easily. The comments under her apology were worse than before. "Too late. Only sorry because your life fell apart. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught." She closed her Instagram account entirely, deleted her Twitter, tried to disappear from the digital world that had destroyed her. But real life wasn't any kinder. She attended every church program her mother suggested. Monday prayer. Wednesday Bible study. Friday night deliverance service. Sunday worship. She became a fixture in those pews, always sitting at the back, always crying during worship, always rushing to the altar when they called for prayers for single women seeking marriage. The prophets and pastors would lay hands on her. "My daughter, God is showing me that you pushed away your destiny with your own hands. You need to repent deeply. The man God sent, you rejected him. You need to pray for mercy." Each prophetic word was a knife. Each prayer session was a reminder that she had done this to herself. The other single women in church would whisper when they saw her, "That's the one from the video. The one who slapped that man." Even in the house of God, even in the place where grace was supposed to flow freely, Amaka couldn't escape her past. She got a job eventually, after 6 months of searching. Not in marketing, not in anything that required public-facing work. She became a cashier at a supermarket in Ikeja. The pay was barely 60,000 naira a month, a fraction of what she used to earn. Her hands that once typed proposals and presentations now scanned barcodes and counted change. Her feet that once wore designer heels now ached in cheap flats after 8-hour shifts. One day, a former colleague came through her checkout line. The woman didn't recognize her at first, and Amaka prayed she wouldn't. But then their eyes met, and recognition dawned. The woman's expression cycled through shock, pity, and something that looked like vindication. "Amaka. Oh my God, is this where you're working now?" "Yes," Amaka said quietly, scanning the woman's items without meeting her eyes. "Wow. I mean, it's good that you found something. That's really good." But her tone said the opposite. Her tone said, "Look how far you've fallen." She paid and left quickly, but Amaka knew by tomorrow everyone from their old office would know. The proud Amaka, reduced to scanning groceries. That night, Amaka sat on her small bed in her small room and allowed herself to really think about Kingsley for the first time in months. Not the humiliation, not the viral video, but the man himself. She replayed every interaction in her mind with new eyes, eyes that had been humbled by suffering. The way he had picked up her things at the mall with both hands, showing respect even when she showed none. The way he had caught her at the wedding, his arms strong and steady, protecting her from a fall she didn't even thank him for. The way he had stood in that parking lot with cheap roses and expensive sincerity, offering her something real in a life filled with fakeness. And the way he had absorbed her slap, his face turning, his eyes closing, but no anger, no retaliation, just quiet dignity in the face of her cruelty. Who was he? Where had he gone? The questions haunted her, but she had no way to find answers. She didn't even know his last name. He had disappeared as mysteriously as he had appeared, like an angel sent to test her, a test she had failed spectacularly. Months turned into a year. Amaka was now 32, single, working a minimum wage job, living in a room that felt like punishment. Her beauty was still there, but it had lost its power. Men who saw her at work sometimes asked for her number, but they were the kind of men she once would have laughed at. Now, she entertained their advances briefly before they too discovered who she was and what she had done. The video was like a brand, permanently marking her as the woman who slapped love away. Then, on a random Tuesday evening, as she sat in her room eating rice and stew from a plastic plate, her phone buzzed with a notification. Her mother had sent her a link with a message, "Amaka, you need to see this." She clicked the link. It was a news article. The headline made her heart stop, "Prince Kingsley Okafor to wed in royal ceremony next month." Prince. The word didn't make sense at first. She read it again. Prince Kingsley Okafor. There was a photo. And when she saw his face, the face she had tried so hard to forget, the face she had struck in anger and pride, she dropped her phone. It was him. Kingsley. The man from the mall. The man from the wedding. The man from the parking lot. The man she had called poor, had mocked publicly, had slapped for not kneeling. He wasn't just some random guy. He was a prince. The son of Eze Okafor III, one of the most respected traditional rulers in Nigeria. The article explained how he had spent 3 years living as a common person to understand his people better, to find a wife who would love him for who he was, not what he had. Amaka read the entire article 3 times, her hands shaking, her vision blurring with tears. There were photos of him at royal functions, wearing traditional regalia, meeting with governors and dignitaries. There were photos of his father's palace, A compound so massive it looked like a small city. And there was a photo of his fiancée, Adeora, a beautiful woman with a genuine smile, standing beside him in simple but elegant attire. The caption said she was a schoolteacher, that they had met during one of his community outreach programs, that their love story was a testament to true humility and connection. The article mentioned the viral video. Of course it did. Prince Kingsley faced public humiliation earlier this year when a woman rejected and physically assaulted him during a proposal attempt. The incident sparked national conversation about pride, entitlement, and the importance of character over status. The prince maintained his dignity throughout the ordeal and has since found love with someone who shares his values of humility and service. Amaka felt like she couldn't breathe. The walls of her small room were closing in. She had slapped a prince. She had mocked royalty. She had rejected a man who could have given her a life beyond her wildest dreams. Not just wealth or status, though he had both, but genuine love from someone who saw past her beauty and wanted to heal her brokenness. And she had destroyed it all with one slap. The wedding date was published in the article. 4 weeks away. A Saturday. The ceremony would be held at the palace, with traditional rites followed by a church service. It would be broadcast on national television due to public interest. The entire nation wanted to see the humble prince marry his humble bride. Amaka made a decision that night. A terrible, desperate, hope against hope decision. She would go. Not to disrupt, not to cause trouble, but to see. To witness what could have been hers. To face her biggest mistake in person. Maybe, just maybe, to find some closure, some way to forgive herself by seeing him happy with someone who deserved him. The 4 weeks passed in a blur. Amaka saved every kobo from her salary. She bought a simple modest dress, nothing flashy, nothing attention-seeking. She planned the trip to the southeast, a 6-hour bus journey from Lagos to Enugu, where the palace was located. She told no one, not even her mother. This pilgrimage of regret was hers alone to bear. The day of the wedding, she woke up at dawn, dressed carefully, and caught the earliest bus. She spent those 6 hours staring out the window, watching Nigeria pass by, thinking about all the choices that had led her here. Every relationship she had sabotaged. Every man she had deemed unworthy. Every time her mother had warned her and she had laughed. Every moment of pride that had built the tower she eventually fell from. She arrived at the palace compound mid-afternoon. The wedding was in full swing. There were hundreds of people, maybe thousands, filling the massive courtyard. Traditional dancers performed. A live band played. The colors, the joy, the celebration, it was everything a royal wedding should be. Amaka stayed at the very back, behind the crowd, partially hidden by a pillar. She didn't want to be seen. She just wanted to see him. And then she did. Kingsley emerged from the palace with his bride. He wore full royal regalia, the kind that marked him as crown prince, heir to the throne. He looked regal, powerful, every inch the royalty he was born to be. But what struck Amaka most was his smile. It was real. Unguarded. The smile of a man who had found exactly what he was looking for. Beside him, Adeora glowed. Not with makeup or expensive jewelry, though she wore beautiful traditional attire. She glowed with happiness, with the confidence of being loved completely. When Kingsley looked at her, his expression was so tender, so full of love and admiration, that Amaka had to look away. Because she knew. She knew in that moment that he had never looked at her that way. Even when he proposed, even when he offered her flowers and honesty, there had always been sadness in his eyes. Sadness because he saw her prison of pride and knew she wouldn't let him free her. But with Adeora, there was no sadness. Just pure, uncomplicated joy. The ceremony continued. The traditional marriage rites were performed. The families exchanged gifts. The elders blessed the union. And through it all, Amaka stood there, crying silently, her tears hidden by the crowd's noise and celebration. She cried for what she had lost. She cried for who she had been. She cried for the man who had seen her and loved her anyway, only to be repaid with violence and contempt. Someone nearby recognized her. She heard the whisper. "Wait, isn't that the girl? The one who slapped him?" Other heads turned. Eyes found her. Phones came up again, ready to record part 2 of her humiliation. But before anyone could say anything else, before the attention could fully shift to her, Amaka did the only thing she could do. She left. She turned and walked away, through the crowd, through the gates, back to the road where she had come from. She walked for almost an hour before finding a taxi. She didn't look back. She couldn't. On the bus ride back to Lagos, as the sun set and darkness filled the sky, Amaka stared at her reflection in the window. The face looking back at her was still beautiful, but it was also marked by something that no makeup could hide. Regret. Deep, soul-crushing regret that would follow her forever. She realized something in that moment. This wasn't a story about losing a rich man or missing an opportunity for wealth. This was about losing something far more valuable, a chance to be loved by someone who saw her, really saw her, and chose her anyway. Kingsley had offered her transformation, redemption, a way out of her prison of pride. And she had not only rejected it, she had attacked it, destroyed it with her own hands. The punishment wasn't that he was a prince. The punishment was that he was a good man, and she had been too proud to see it until it was far, far too late. Amaka returned to her small room in Surulere that night, exhausted physically and spiritually. She sat on her bed in the darkness, not bothering to turn on the light, and finally allowed herself to break completely. Not the crying she had done at the wedding. This was different. This was the kind of crying that comes from the deepest part of the soul, where all the lies we tell ourselves are finally stripped away and we have to face who we really are. "God," she whispered into the darkness, her voice hoarse and broken, "forgive me. Please, forgive me. I destroyed everything. My pride destroyed me." There was no lightning bolt of revelation. No angelic voice telling her everything would be okay. Just silence and the sound of her own breathing and the distant noise of Lagos life continuing outside her window. But in that silence, something shifted. Not externally. Nothing in her circumstances changed. But internally, something broke open. The shell of pride that had protected her for so long finally cracked completely, and underneath it, she found something she had almost forgotten existed: humility. Real humility. Not the forced kind that comes from being humbled by circumstances, though that was part of it. But the genuine recognition that she was not, had never been, better than anyone else. That beauty was a gift, not a crown. That every person she had dismissed and mocked and rejected had been human, with feelings and worth and dignity that her pride had blinded her to seeing. She thought about Kingsley one more time. Not with longing or regret for what she had lost, though that was there too, but with genuine gratitude. Because in his rejection, in his disappearance, in his marrying someone else, he had given her something more valuable than his love. He had given her a mirror. A clear, unfiltered look at who she had become and how desperately she needed to change. The next morning, Amaka woke up early and went to her mother's shop. Mama Amaka was arranging provisions on the shelves, her movements slow and tired, aged by the stress of the past year. When she saw her daughter, she paused, her expression guarded. "Mama," Amaka said, and then she knelt. Right there on the dusty floor of the shop, she knelt before her mother, something she hadn't done since she was a child. "I'm sorry. For everything. For the shame I brought to you. For not listening. For thinking I was too good for the life you gave me, for the values you tried to teach me. I was wrong about everything. And I want to start again. As a different person. As someone you can be proud of." Mama Amaka's eyes filled with tears. She pulled her daughter up and held her, and for the first time in over a year, Amaka felt like she was home. Not the apartment in Lekki. Not the small room in Surulere. But home in the sense of being loved despite your failures, of being accepted in your brokenness. "My daughter," her mother said, "this is what I've been praying for. Not success. Not marriage. Not money. Just for you to remember that you are human. That we are all equal before God." Life didn't magically improve after that moment. Amaka still worked at the supermarket. Still lived in a small room. Still carried the weight of her past everywhere she went. But something fundamental had changed. She started treating people differently. The colleague who recognized her, she reached out and apologized for how she had treated everyone at their old workplace. Some forgave her. Others didn't. She accepted both responses with grace. She started volunteering at her mother's church, working with young girls, teaching them about self-worth that wasn't based on appearance or status. She would tell them her story, the whole painful story, not to gain sympathy but to warn them about the dangers of pride. Some of the girls listened. Others made the same mistakes she had made. But she kept teaching, kept sharing, because maybe, just maybe, one life saved from pride's destruction would give her pain some purpose. Months turned into another year. Then 2 years. Amaka was now 34. Still single, though she had stopped going to marriage prayer meetings. She had made peace with the possibility that marriage might never happen for her, and strangely, that peace brought her more joy than all her years of desperately seeking it. She had learned what Kingsley tried to teach her that day in the parking lot, that your worth isn't determined by who chooses you, but by how you choose to treat others. That love given freely, without conditions or requirements, is worth more than all the wealth and status in the world. That humility isn't weakness. It's the greatest strength, because it allows you to see people as they truly are, to give and receive love without the barriers of pride. One evening, as she walked home from work, she passed a young couple arguing on the street. The man had just proposed, kneeling with a ring, and the woman was complaining loudly that it wasn't romantic enough, that he should have done it at a restaurant, that the ring wasn't big enough. The man looked crushed, humiliated, just like Kingsley had looked that day. Amaka stopped. She walked over to the young woman and said, quietly but firmly, "Sister, can I talk to you for a moment?" The woman looked annoyed but curious. They stepped aside, and Amaka told her a shortened version of her story. The proposal, the slap, the viral video, the loss of everything, the prince she never knew she rejected. "I'm not saying accept him if you don't love him," Amaka concluded. "But if you do love him, don't let pride tell you how that love should look. Because years from now, you won't remember the size of the ring or the location of the proposal. You'll remember the man who loved you enough to make himself vulnerable, to risk rejection, to offer you his heart. And if you destroy that with pride and entitlement, you'll spend the rest of your life regretting it. Trust me. I know." The young woman's eyes were wide. She looked back at the man still kneeling on the street, his face a mixture of hope and resignation. Then she looked at Amaka, really looked at her, and saw the truth written in the lines of someone who had learned this lesson the hardest way possible. "Thank you," the young woman whispered. Then she went back to the man, helped him up, and said yes. Not because the proposal was perfect, but because love never is, and that's okay. Amaka walked away smiling. It was a small thing. One conversation. One couple. But it felt like redemption, tiny and fragile, but real nonetheless. She never saw Kingsley again, except occasionally on TV when he appeared at national events or when his growing family was featured in magazines. He and Adaora had 3 children now. Their home was known for charity work, for educational programs, for being the kind of royal household that actually served the people. Every time Amaka saw him, she felt that familiar pang of loss, but it was accompanied now by something else, genuine happiness for him. He had found what he deserved. And that was enough. As for Amaka, her story didn't have a fairy tale ending. She never became rich again. Never regained her social media following. Never found another prince. But she found something perhaps more valuable, herself. The real self underneath the pride and performance. The woman who could look at a cashier's name tag and remember their name the next day. Who could hold a door for someone carrying heavy bags. Who could say, "I'm sorry," without choking on the words. Who could kneel before her mother and before God and before life itself with gratitude instead of entitlement. Years later, when people would occasionally recognize her from the old video, she wouldn't run or hide or make excuses. She would own it. "Yes, that was me. I was a different person then. Pride made me cruel. But God used that moment to break me and rebuild me into someone better. Someone humbler. Someone who understands that every person you meet deserves respect, regardless of their status or what they can offer you." And sometimes, when she was alone in that small room that she had learned to call home, she would think about that day in the parking lot and imagine a different ending. An ending where she said yes. Where she saw past his simple clothes to his noble heart. Where she accepted those crushed roses like they were diamonds. Where she allowed herself to be loved by someone who knew her flaws and chose her anyway. But then she would shake her head and smile sadly, because she understood now that some lessons can only be learned through loss. That some blessings are recognized only after they're gone. That pride doesn't just come before a fall. Sometimes pride is the fall itself, and the climb back up is what teaches you how to finally see clearly. She would end those moments of reflection with a prayer. Not for what she had lost, but for what she had learned. Thank you, Lord, for breaking my pride before it destroyed my soul. Thank you for using pain to teach me what pleasure never could. And thank you for that man, that prince in disguise, who loved me enough to show me the truth about myself, even though it cost him everything. The narrator's voice softens, becoming almost a whisper, as the story draws to its close. Respect every man, no matter his status. Not because he might be a prince in disguise, though that's possible, but because he is human, just like you. Because the measuring stick you use for others will eventually be used to measure you. Because pride might feel like power in the moment, but humility is what builds a life worth living. Amaka learned this lesson the hardest way possible. She slapped away her destiny with her own hand. But in the ashes of that mistake, in the rubble of her collapsed pride, she found something that wealth and status and social media followers could never give her. She found humanity. She found grace. She found the strength that comes from being broken and rebuilt by the very lessons you once rejected. The question is not whether pride will fall. It always does. The question is whether you'll learn from the fall, or whether you'll spend your life still pretending you never hit the ground. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think about how you treat others, if it reminded you that every person deserves respect and dignity regardless of what they can offer you, then do me a favor. Hit that like button right now. Drop a broken heart emoji in the comments and tell me what lesson you're taking away from Amaka's story. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because more powerful, life-changing stories are coming your way. Remember, the person you despise today might be the blessing you've been praying for. Treat everyone with kindness. Walk in humility. And never, ever let pride convince you that you're too good for genuine love. Thank you for watching. And may you never have to learn this lesson the way Amaka did. Before you go, can I ask one small favor? This story took days to write, record, and edit. Every frame, every emotion. If it touched you, the best way to support me is simple. Hit subscribe, tap like, and drop your location in the comments so I can give you a shout out in the next video. Today's shoutouts goes to Joy Ferdinand from Dubai, Miriam from South Africa, and Lenny's from Germany. Thank you all for being here. Your support means the world to me.